I called this talk, Do You Want Fries With That? Because it first came about from thinking about this whole issue of cybersecurity and why is secure software development perceived as an extra thing, something on top of what you have to do. Now, that is something Ian, my colleague from Portsmouth, back there, and I will be talking about in a workshop tomorrow afternoon. Thank you. Maybe I should be, there you go, I'll stay. Short version, it's not that developers don't care or that they're not interested. It's just that it's not become part of the workflow yet. And we'll be looking a bit at some pipeline in doing that, in exploring that idea. Right, so anybody know what this is? Anybody seen one of these? It's not a telegraph box. Nobody seen one of these? Huh? No, not as exciting as any of these, actually. Sorry. Here's its owner. This is my brother-in-law, Ian, holding some of the contents there. He worked at Broomwade, who are the compressor people. You may have seen their compressors and various roadworks and things. He worked there his entire working life, actually, now retired. Inside that box, now does anybody recognise them? Punch cards, right, yeah. So I wouldn't, that's kind of a useful place for storage if you're working with punched cards. So this is roundabout sort of 1970s-ish. I will be monumentally stereotyping because this is 1970 now. So be warned. Ideas expressed here, attitudes expressed here are not my own, but those of the 1970s. So there's a punched card about, those little advertising cards on your tables, a little bit narrower than those, a little bit longer, and with holes punched in them. It's basically to indicate, somebody who knows can tell me which one's a naught and which one's a one, but basically it's characters, 80 columns going, if I turn that way, so going across the card, 80 columns of characters. So this is how you stored your programs. So storage media are a large part of my argument, yes.
And it's an 1880 technology as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. This goes back to Jacquard looms and programming those. Absolutely, it's a we got our telegraph. We eventually got some sort of like valve machines and whole Bletchley Park thing come forward quite a bit away from that, with computer technology not being publicly available from there because that was all highly top secret stuff. But eventually the rest of the world figured out computers and there we were in the 1960s and 70s actually being able to program things with bits of cardboard. So this is me in Brighton. This is Brighton Station with my sister Jill. And the reason I'm introducing my brother-in-law Ian and my sister Jill is because they both had roles in the computer industry in the 1970s. So Ian was a systems analyst and a programmer. Jill was a punch card operator. And this is where I need some volunteers, please, for my pipeline. Somebody who dresses smartly, so who perhaps at one time might have been likely to go to work wearing a suit. Anybody likely to have gone, or is otherwise somewhat sort of smart dresser in their normal life. I know, yeah. Or who can play that role? How about an actor? An actor, dear boy, who can play that role. May I please start my pipeline with you? So if you would start my pipeline over there. So, paper and pen there. Guy here is very kindly my systems analyst. And his role is basically to analyse the logic of what we need to happen. So, had I come prepared for this talk rather than doing it at sort of like 2 days' notice, you would have had a flowchart template. As it is, just wing it, scribble some kind of flowchart. So, step one in our pipeline, our systems analyst. Guy will draw up a nice flowchart that don't worry, it doesn't have to work. We're not going to be doing live coding and testing it here, right? It would take far too long within this paradigm, frankly. So imagine you have a template, okay? I like giving out work. Right, who thinks they know it all? Okay, oh yeah.
That's not true, I don't think I know it all.
Yeah, okay, who knows it all? Right. There we go. So, Dom is just a programmer. Well, I say just a programmer. I mean, he knows it all because he's a programmer, right? But once Guy has drawn out his flowchart, he can hand that over on a piece of paper. This is not a substitute. This is for what really happened. This is a piece of paper will be handed over when Guy has completed his work, which he doesn't seem to be getting on with. What should we do? A calculation average of a few numbers, popular one for students. Yeah, yeah. Tell you what you can't do. You can't print "Hello World" because you haven't got any monitor to display it on. Right. I mean, you can print it out, I suppose. It would actually literally print, right? So for all you youngsters who've wondered why the hell does it say print, this is why, because we print it on paper. Right, yeah, I mean, even in my day, some printing on paper, not very much. Right, so, yeah, Guy has got spec. Dom is merrily chatting up, is waiting to fill in a coding sheet to translate that diagram with the logic into code, which he will write implement on a coding sheet. Probably not quite as neatly as that, frankly, if I know Dom, but there you go. Right. So once he has written the code, for the next stage in the pipeline, we have to have a lady. So may I because this is the 1970s. So while Dom's waiting, he's probably chatting up the punch card list. Oh, there you go. That's good. Keep him out of trouble. Good. So our analyst has mapped out the logic. Our programmer can now translate that into the magical code. No, because we're heading into waterfall era here now, so you can't go backwards. Oh. There you go. So you've come to a conference and learnt something, right? You've got to punch things. Yeah, I'm going to have to find you something to punch things with. Fortunately, somebody's left a load of bits of cardboard here. So you can have a blank punch card. So this is my sister's job, sitting at her keyboard with a big stack of punch cards basically go in a hopper. She types away, looking at that coding sheet that will come through from Dom, and types in the code to print out those punched cards. And she used to, this was pretty much exclusively a woman's job in computing. In 1970s. She actually eventually became a programmer because she thought that'd be much more interesting, but there was quite a lot of resistance to that at the time. She had to work quite hard to get into programming. Anyway, yeah, so she was extraordinarily fast at this. She used to have races with her office mate to see who could do most cards in the time. So when our programmer gets done, he can hand that on to our punch card operator, marvellous, who can now type away. So yeah, in this, interesting actually that the women are the one doing entering the program in any kind of electronic way. Yeah, so absolutely punch those cards. So what you might do if you've got one odd one that you need to change is you can have a little mechanical device, which sadly I haven't got one of, where you can go edit a card and punch some more holes in it. Also, if I had props with me today, I'd be able to show you one where the little chads, the anti-holes, can be stuck back in to edit a card. And I'm pretty sure programmers of these days could actually read bits of this in a way that you'd recognise bits of hex in my era. And I don't know what you youngsters do these days. I don't know what you recognise, but there are things that you can just see that mere mortals wouldn't. Right, so. Finally, somebody who doesn't like to talk to others, please. Somebody who'd like to work in a room on their own in a basement. Yeah. No, I've got one. 1, 2, 3. Right. No, I need one more. Yeah, I can't do that because I won't be able to hear me. I need one more person. Lovely. Thank you very much. So you. Oh, you've got a beard as well. Perfect. So I say this is 1970. We are stereotyping. The computer operators have beards. In fact, my sister said she only knew one who did, but that was absolutely a stereotype. So if our punch card operator has got that done, which she probably has done because this is a women's job and they were fast at it, actually, there you go. That links back beautifully, right? The fast keying. Our dainty, nimble little fingers are so good at that. And that carried on like 100 years later. Right, so you've got, in fact, a large stack of punched cards. If you see photos of stacks of punched cards, you might see a line drawn across them because you can imagine if you walk down the corridor without Ian's lovely box, you drop those cards at any point in the process, you're going to get a tangled mess. Hopefully, you might be lucky enough to have a machine that will sort them where they've got index numbers built into the last couple of columns of the coding. But it's quite nice to have some way of seeing that they're in the right order. So those get dropped into a hopper in the top of the machine, and the magic cogs of the computer whir, and you end up with printout coming out the other end. So classic fanfold paper. Anyone ever seen fanfold paper? Yeah, I mean, it's still around in some places, right? There are some things it's really good for. So this is your output from your program, this stack of paper. So you imagine where in this pipeline are we going to introduce some exploits? Where are our CVEs in this? It's what we're going to do. We're going to maybe intercept Dom as he walks down the corridor to chat up the girls in the punch card room. Are we going to trip up whoever carries those cards down to the computer room? How are you going to then edit it? Are you going to sort of leap out from somewhere and grab some cards and go edit them like this? There's not a lot of scope, right? This is a computer with massively less power than I now have on my wrist, for goodness sake. It's I wouldn't like to tell you by how much, but just insane amounts that would blow your mind. So really, not a lot of scope for cybersecurity in that. So thank you very, very much indeed to my pipeline of the 1970s. I apologise for stereotyping you wildly, but that's in the interest of historical accuracy.
I can tell you how fast an IBM machine like that was because we covered it in my talk literally 90 minutes ago. Cool. So that machine,
it's history afternoon.
An IBM System 360 ran at 1 megahertz, but it takes 8 clock cycles to access a register, so it only does 35,000 operations per second. And I think that machine's a little bit earlier than that, but you're talking about that kind of speed. So it's better compared to doing it by hand, but not what you'd call fast.
Right. Okay, so some exceptions to the blokes are programmers, girls are punch card operators. This is Margaret Hamilton, lead developer on the Apollo program, standing next to her code, I believe, there in that fanfold paper. Did she? So, if there is anybody watching anywhere, that was a bit of information that she created the term software engineering. I mean, it's kind of, if you look at the amount of civil engineering involved in managing your code, the parallels become a bit more obvious, don't they? So, yes, there is always a cheer for a VT100, right? You've got to love them to bits. This kind of changed things a bit, right? So that was this pipeline we had here. This was batch programming, where you hand stuff over to the next phase, and it goes and gets added to the queue for the computer room, and it gets run at you're probably behind somebody else. If you're a student, you're sending it in, and you probably get your results back the following week. If you're actually working in a business, it's going to be a bit different, obviously. So, a nice separation of data as well on those systems. I was asking Ian about how this worked, and some of his cards would be data, some would be the payroll program. So what he would be doing is pulling the cards for the relevant personnel records, running the payroll thing once a month. Stacks of those would get dropped into the machine, and that would run the payroll. So this is real-time programming, which kind of because you could sit there and you could type things immediately. So suddenly, poor Hannah is out of a job as a punch card operator. I guess probably sorry, I don't know your name. So Jonathan's out of a job as an operator. Suddenly, the know-it-all programmer is kind of taking, well, you might have analyst programmer anyway, right? But you're sort of taking over that job. Probably, yeah. And still some analysis around as well. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And now you can sit there and you can hack away to your heart's content. So this, Finn, this is the early end of this talk for another venue, so which I managed to leave in there. So, but I couldn't quite bear to take out the sort of slightly awkward pun. So that's why it's still there. Now, the reason I include this bit, just as an aside, is because of that switch from batch to real time. So the earliest example I can find of this whole 10 times programmer, choose your word carefully here, idea, that's, she said, slightly generously, actually dates back, as far as I can tell, to a study which was looking at productivity of batch programming versus real-time programming. And surprise, surprise, it turns out that individual differences are more important than technology. So didn't really matter a stuff whether you were writing on bits of paper or you were typing into your gorgeous, shiny new VT100. Individuals had different productivity with their code. Now, productivity is itself, the measurement of that is an interesting idea, and a whole other talk. Don't let me get started. If I get started on that, somebody, we need to get Pete in to shove me off the stage, because that's not what we're here for. But yeah, that's a whole different story. I kind of talked about that at my last ever conference presentation before lockdown, actually, as well. So just go look that one up. Look up NordDevCon on the internet and watch that one if you want to know more about my thoughts on that area, and some slightly less polite words about it, I suspect, if I remember right. Yes. So we were in a position where, yes, we've got a pipeline of them, but we had some quite geeky people able to sit in corners, and the stereotyping continues, right? But suddenly, the moment you're freed from that constraint of those cards, and also you've got means of getting your software on much lighter, thinner, more portable media. Yes. Such as 8-inch floppy disks. For anyone who's not seen them, please feel free to come and grab them and have a look. Any young people, so this is like an extra large print 3D version of the save icon, basically. And they even come with their own little envelopes and everything. So please have a look, if you'd like to. So that's starting to change the world a bit, right? Your software can be on that, your data can be on that. It can be wandering around, carried out. It's not quite shirt pocket size yet, but it's very easy to exfiltrate that. And, oops, in a way that the punch cards just couldn't. So, also, with the screens, things are getting, users are becoming a thing, right? It's suddenly there are people able to sit in front of computers in their offices. It's not just all this pipeline of experts doing things, but we're starting to find ways for people to sit in front of computers and work with them themselves. I'm not quite there yet with it, and actually playing a game like this would have been a bespoke console and was my prize Prezi one Christmas, a game of Pong. Slight aside, I went to a museum of arcade games in San Francisco where they had Pong. Pong was my game, obviously, because that's one I had at home. And I desperately wanted to play. Found a random teenage lad standing nearby and said, come and play. And I completely trashed him because it took him ages to figure out that turn the knob to make the thing up and go up and down. Only way I'm ever going to beat a teenager at any video game, but it's brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. So there we are with users. Anyone have one of these at some point in their history? Yeah, absolutely. So the Mac, Macintosh? What was it? Yeah, it just plain Macintosh, was it?
Later a 128K, but only because they made a 512K.
Right, yeah. Yeah. But this is not the great big IBM computer in a room. This this will sit on your desk. And did on very many desks. So, oh, yeah, absolutely. It's almost portable. So? Anyway. Yes, yeah, let's keep an eye on the time. Right, okay, yeah. So, the point is, this is now out of the big computer room. There's still big computers in big computer rooms, but computers have escaped. It's got a disk drive in there. You can get things into it and out of it. And you're starting to have scope with these disks to be able to put viruses on them. There's some way to start interfering with the computing that used to be the exclusive preserve of a pipeline of professionals. So this is part of the history of where we needed to start looking at. So not do you want fries with that as an extra thing, but do you want itties with that? Quality, accessibility, usability, security, all things that have become relevant as part of the developments in technology. So we've got all these whizzy new things the technology can do, but also other qualities of it, aspect, maybe that's not the word I want, other elements about it, factors about it, that have become relevant as a result of that, some of which are for the good, from helping people, some of which are, bloody hell, we've got to keep those hackers out of our system. So, I mean, quality can start to happen. There's a limited amount you can do in terms of quality, right? When you're writing out your code on a bit of paper and you've got a stack of fanfold this high, the sheer amount of effort in that whole pipeline, you're not going to go code reviews to go back and go, oh, change that to, you know, and we're working at a lower level as well. There's, you know, I dare say there was some, maybe there was some, but it's not. It's absolutely very different now in terms of what you can do in looking at the code. So, yeah, what you're going to do, go back and look at these? Maybe. But it's smaller programs as well. So you've got your cards, you've got your printout. So it's not something like this where you're writing in high level, you can automate the testing. This is a bit of Python testing stuff here. There's the sheer affordances for you as a techie are very, very different in this era. So your ability to test things, your ability to inspect things has changed enormously. As we moved on with the ability to put software on portable media on these portable machines, we had this whole era of shrink-wrapped software where you could go to PC World and stroll and browse along the aisles of all sorts of marvellous software and pick a box off the shelf and take it home and take off the shrink-wrap plastic and take out initially floppy disks, later CDs, maybe DVDs for a little while, but everything moved on pretty fast. And now, if they still had those shelves there, they'd be as empty as the March 2020 toilet roll shelves, because people don't get software that way now. Because now we have distributed computing. Computers are connected to each other. They're connected to the telegraph, but a really, really fast telegraph that everyone's got access to, basically. Well, not everyone, that's a whole other talk as well, right? So the world has changed massively in terms of accessing computers for some amazing reasons, for amazingly good uses, but also, you know, all sorts of bad stuff. Again, whole other talk, all the bad stuff, right? So having this sort of setup, having our telegraph means we can buy and sell things via the telegraph. I'm just going to call it the telegraph from now on, actually. It's going to cause no end of confusion. We can buy books. Did anybody buy books from Amazon.com when they came in from the States? Yeah. I wish I'd brought it. I didn't think, well, would have never thought to. I've got a plastic insulated cup that they just spontaneously sent out to customers around about this time, which is rather lovely, and it's survived well. So yeah, great new things you can do. I mean, yeah, this is just a part of everyday life now, right? But it was a new thing, and you tell what a new thing it is from just how crap these websites were. But you know, for their time, this was a time though. I tell you what, I did like about this time. Nothing was below the fold. So fed up of having to scroll down to see anything of interest on a page. So Yeah, no cookie warnings. No, yeah, back when cookies were still actually edible. So yeah, so things changed there, right? And the moment you're having like normal people using your stuff, well, not the moment. I mean, it took a while for this to catch on, but if you look at how people approach things now in development, accessibility is very much a thing. Accessibility has been not universally and successfully adopted, because you'll have seen a whole load of sites and apps that are still rubbish about it. But it's now a thing that they should be rubbish about it. Accessibility is an itty that the industry has, or at least the bits of the industry that care about what they're doing, which is, is a whole different can of worms, care about this itty. And here is, top left there, the obligatory, because you've got to have one really, hacker in hoodie, green matrix letters picture, because once you've connected your computers together like this to a network that anyone can access, you have to worry about people being on there who shouldn't, doing things with it that they shouldn't. So this is new with, I mean, a little bit with the floppy disks and so on, with the viruses, but just a whole new order of magnitude of possibilities of things going wrong, nefarious things going wrong because of the way your technology now works. And this kind of caught people by surprise because they built these things to do stuff, right? You're looking at the use cases, not the misuse cases. By the way, do look at the misuse cases, please, misuse cases for a number of reasons, not least this one, but also for diversity ones. Yeah, no, a whole other talk, and that was yours, so I'll stay off that one. But it's kind of new, right? This is not a concern that was baked in from the beginning. This is, I mean, look, quality is a thing, right? You know, if I talk to people about software quality in 1970, I don't know. Maybe they're thinking about the GSM with punch cards. I have no idea. But quality is a thing. Usability is a thing. Accessibility is a thing. Security is also a thing, and people are aware of the fact that they need to account for it. But if you're looking at accessibility, you're turning to people with some expertise in that to guide you. Not, I mean, again, it's a diversity issue partly, but also you're looking at guidelines and support you can't understand all those things and know all those details. Similarly with usability, not everyone's going to be an expert in that, but you can call in people, you can call in UX experts, you can call in professionals to help with that, but you're aware that it's needed. But what you don't want is those people coming in and saying, right, no, we do things this way, and you really need to do this to fix it. Because it's got to be with the grain of what you're doing with the development. And what are the principles you know as a, for example, expert on disabilities or accessibility, anything like that? What do you know that we can implement and take account of in the work we do? And security's not really got there with that yet, on the whole. And it's too big we can't just say, programmers need to know that. It's a bit like saying, users should just learn. It's no less arrogant than that, which is, like I say, another quick plug for tomorrow afternoon, because that's what we've been working on, trying to help with that from the point of view of software developers, not from but you must do this because it's important, because it's not safe if you don't. But if it doesn't fit in with your particular pipeline, it's like asking that pipeline we had earlier to do something quite different in what they do. So add a bit on the side of that, or meanwhile, could you sort of drive that down the road and back before you take it to the computer room or whatever. No, it just doesn't fit. Sorry, going ranty now. It's better move on. So, yes, we do need something more from our developers than we used to have. It's very long way now from sitting in a room down a corridor, not having to think about the rest of the world. Very long way from that. You now kind of need to be up and running and taking these things into account and knowing how to work within that. You might be involved now in ops as well as development, as part of understanding that wider context that your software is running in. But that's all happening. Yeah? Devs are problem solvers, they're smart people, they can make these changes. So, having said that, prove me right, your industry needs you. Thank you.
As you were talking about the 1970s, perhaps I'm one of the few people in the room who was actually teaching computing in the 1970s.
Yeah, and so your students will have had a long wait, I'm guessing.
And I sort of reflect upon some of my experiences there and how lucky my students were to have a local polytechnic that allowed them to go and work in the data processing room so they could actually put in their own punch cards. I also wrote an entire interactive compiler and runtime system for Cecil, which allowed my students to use teletypes. So by 1975, my students were interacting with the machines. It was a big mainframe, but they did have interaction, and I suspect that may have happened in many other places as well.
Thank you. Yes, but not everywhere, actually. My husband, who basically same age as me, did learn some programming at school, and the way they did it was coding sheets, and or it may have been a year slightly before him, but not very much. Coding sheets down to the local poly probably, and then a week later came back again. But yes, very, very lucky to have that access.
I'm wondering about the InfoSec kind of issues you might have with earlier systems in terms of like confidentiality and integrity and so on. So you might not be able to attack the chain that we were so efficiently forming on the stage in a kind of integrity attack, but you might be able to do a confidentiality attack at any stage. There could have been snooping going on a lot earlier in these kinds of situations. And I suspect even on the Victorian internet there was a fair bit of that. In fact,
but they'd have to be on the premises. I guess that's
or on a hill nearby with a
telescope. So they'd have to be physically intercepting things to do it. But yes, some things are possible. Yeah. And in fact, that's interesting because it comes back to the so early days of security with network things, actually technical attacks, relatively easy at that point because it was kind of, someone's doing that to our system. And then security tightened immensely and that got harder to do, but the human attacks were then the easier option. And at that point, you're maybe talking your way into the building, you're tailgating someone. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that's probably where we are at the moment. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit still. Again, a whole other talk. Jonathan. Oh, sorry, over there.
No, that's Matthew. It's fine. I remember when I went to school in like 2003 to 6, I had a bunch of student projects, and I don't think any of them had any concern on the grading for security or how garbage the interface might have been. Or anything like that. Do you know if it has changed and there is more? Because I know that it's overwhelming if someone is supposed to make their first program and they have to consider so many things. That might be overwhelming for when you start, but before you enter the school, you should have known that this is what a shippable product should look like.
Yeah, it's terrifyingly recent that has changed. I could name them actually because they're not unusual. If you look at all these BCS accredited degrees and you look at BCS guidelines, security is not a thing. You're right, there's a lot of stuff that you need people to learn, and you can't possibly learn all of it. But security was not a part of those guidelines for accreditation for a very long time. Yeah, but that's quite recent compared to it's been that way for a decade. But some things were accredited before the changes, and they've got 5 years to run, and and actually the case I'm thinking of changed their first year computing courses in 2018 so it's a common first year across all the cybersecurity and computing, networks, business IT, software engineering, all of those then had a common first year, all of which had some fundamental security stuff included in it. Before that, people were learning odd bits of security here and there in courses where people were aware of issues, maybe something where they were learning about databases, there was a bit in there. But as a fundamental part, stated part of the curriculum in what modules were there, that was when they were reaccredited in 2018. And I don't feel too bad about mentioning it because this was not unusual, right? It wasn't a lagging behind thing. It's that really there was catching up to do. It is always a game of catch up to some degree.
The problem with security is very often, from the point of view of teaching, and I think of pupils aged 16 to 18, is we need to teach them ethics. When I was running computer systems for computer studies for pupils in that sort of age group in a local school, our network, I insisted that nobody had passwords. Why? Because I wanted to teach them that just because you could do something didn't make it right to do it. And I think that was a very important lesson for them to learn. And one of the things that interested me was one of my star pupils, who I only had for a year, went back to his native country in Israel and asked his father's university to have access for computing. And they said, no way, you're only 17. We don't let 17-year-olds near our computers. So he promptly worked out a way of making any console into the master console. Now that is a real technical skill.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. But what really delighted me was when he had finished that, he wrote it all up, explained what he had done, how he had done it, and how it could be prevented in future, and handed it into the university and said, can I have computing facilities, please?
Fair play to him. That's for more students like that.
Hi. As it turns out, I'm sitting on the ACCU committee for revising those curriculum guidelines itself. Indeed, security was a relatively recent thing. A lot of the problem is, and this comes especially from industry groups, there is so little time to get undergrads competent, right? Like, cognitively, becoming a programmer is kind of a big goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just by itself.
You cannot squeeze it all in. And
exactly.
It's about prioritizing, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's very akin to learning to read, right? We start with C spot run. We don't start with, Tennyson. And there's a reason for that. And I think some of it is, we have to have awareness for undergrads, but industry also has to really step up for, okay, you're a programmer, good job. We're going to continue with professional development. It blows my mind that most trades have requirements for days of ongoing training and development. And we're like, oh, if you're lucky, your employer will let you take vacation to go to a conference. And I'm like, well, no kidding, we're bad at all of this. So,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. I quite agree. I mean, I've worked with a lot of these. Some of them are very, very good, but they need to get out there and work. They come back very different from placements, actually. That changes them hugely. If anybody has placements they'd like students for, sit while I'm here.
Okay. I just wondered if we could wind back to you had a slide with the punch card, and then afterwards you had the VT100, and then we had Visual Studio Code. And it was just something I wanted to pick up on in that sequence of pictures.
Yep.
So if you go back to the
punch... It was a massive leap. Have I gone too far back now?
The punch card is perfect.
Oh, right, okay.
So we have these arguments about line length. No argument about maximum line length here. The card literally only has 80 columns on it. So suck it up if anyone wants more than 80. That's all your punch card's got. The card is encoded, I think it's a binary coded decimal. So you've got the numbers 0 to 9, and then the extra rows at the top indicate zeros, 10s, and 20s. So that is probably extended binary coded decimal interchange code, EBCDIC, which is the important letters are BCD. It is binary coded decimal, and the ones around the outside are just to confuse you. So that's an 80 column thing. Then if you scroll to the VT100, which is or the printed paper will do as well. It's 80 columns wide because
everybody loves the VT100. Got to have the VT100.
But again, we've got the line lengths because it's 80 columns wide. And then I thought the curious thing was in the picture of Visual Studio Code, the word they use for the little box at the bottom where you can type in the commands, it's labelled. We'll get there. Everyone knows what it's labelled because you see it all the time. It's labelled terminal because it is an emulator of a VT100, which itself is an emulator of a teletype. And even the device entry on Unix, it's a TTY. It is a teletype.
So why is it called a terminal?
Probably because it's terminating equipment on the end of the wire.
Ah, right, yeah. Either that or because if you drop it on, if someone drops it on you, it'll kill you.
When you had RS-232, you had data computing equipment, I think, at one end, and data terminating DC and DTE equipment at the other.
DTE and DCE, that takes me back, yeah.
Hence, terminal.
Yeah, but I mean, also, much argument about this, about the length of lines, but you also need to take in kind of human biology in what you can actually see without turning your head and what you can focus on. Let's not go on to tabs. Yeah. My claim to shame for tabs is that I've had tab mapped to 4 spaces for so long that I'd forgotten it wasn't a tab. So I pressed the tab key and I'd forgotten and thought, someone at one point thought it was a tab. Very embarrassing. Sorry, did I see another hand? Were you wrapping me up?
I think we have to close now because the lightning talks start earlier today. So
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.